Alright, so today we're going to do a lab on pwnlabs.io, which is a really awesome platform for learning cloud. Specifically, you can learn AWS, Google, and Azure, Red Team and Blue Team. There's also free and premium. Today we're going to do a free lab on AWS Red Team. It's called Leverage Leak Credentials for Pwnage. What's really cool about these labs is most of them show you how to attack, get information, and retrieve a flag for proof of concept, which is usually an MD5 format here, as you can see. But also at the end, it shows you remediation steps and how to avoid the attack that just happened. So let's go ahead and get started with the scenario. It says, in the ever-shifting world of logistics, Huge Logistics has emerged as an undisputed global leader. Yet, every Goliath has its vulnerabilities. Whispered rumors in cybersecurity circles suggest that amidst the vast digital sprawl of Huge Logistics, there might lie unnoticed weaknesses. As a seasoned security consultant, your mission is set. Navigate the labyrinth of Huge Logistics GitHub repositories, looking for the smallest chink in their armor. Dive deep, analyze thoroughly, and leave no stone unturned. Can you spot what others have missed? So it looks like we're going to be looking at GitHub repositories to find information to pivot to other places in the environment. The learning outcomes, it's, as you can see, RDS database enumeration, identification of secrets using SAST tools, learn how to retrieve AWS account ID given the AWS access key, and we'll be learning a little bit about some AWS commands. Also, understand how this scenario can be prevented, which is mostly using environment variables in GitHub, which we'll jump into in a second. So the real world context is exposure of credentials in .env files is a common real world issue. .env files or .env files are often used in development environments to store configuration variables, including sensitive information like API keys, database passwords, and other credentials. If accidentally committed to shared or public repositories, this could provide malicious actors with information needed to compromise a company's infrastructure. So we'll talk a little bit at the end about how to avoid this, but I think this is kind of the key. If accidentally committed, a lot of developers, they might use environment variables or things in environment files that is local, but then that gets pushed to a shared or public repository, which then can be accessed. So we'll talk a little bit about that at the end, about what not to do to avoid this attack. So first, we'll look at the GitHub repository, which was provided at the top of the lab. And just going back real quick, we can see that this whole app has all these files. And we'll just take a look at the .env file. And as you can see, this env file gives a lot of information. And as you can see, we're already hitting some great information, username and password, but that's not all. We can scroll down, keep scrolling down, and we do find an AWS access key ID here. We don't have an account ID or an account name, but we do have username, password for a database, and this secret key. So let's go ahead and go over using this secret key, which starts with AKIA. We're going to use this key to try to find account information. And that's what this command is right here. AWS STS get access key info. So we're using the AWS command line tool, specifically the STS command with get access key info parameter, and the access key ID specifically is what we just did. And that will run, and then we find the account, right? So then you can see how dangerous this is going to start being. We found this piece of information. We were able to run this whole command, and now we find this piece of information. What can we do with this? Now we can actually go in and log in now to the AWS account, because we have the account ID, and we have the username, and we have the password. Let's just go back real quick to the env file. Here's the access key ID that we used to get the account ID, and then we do have Jose and the password here, which we'll use to go ahead and sign into this account. So now you can see, just using a little bit of searching in the env file, we're able to get into this Amazon account, which can be dangerous. Now we're going to go to Secrets Manager. You can see this is recently visited, so we'll go to Secret Manager. Looks like my virtual machine's a little bit slow, but that's okay. And then we come up with some information here: secret name and description, admin access to the MySQL database, and access to the MySQL database. And let's just go ahead and look real quick. MySQL here, database, and then the port. So we are verifying that we're working with MySQL. Let's check out the employee database admin. Okay, don't have permission. That's okay. We'll go back. Let's check out the employee database information. And look at that. We do have access to this. And we have the secret value information, which isn't displayed up front, but we can hit retrieve secret value, and would you look at that? So going through the account, we now have the full access for the MariaDB, which is a MySQL instance, once again on port 3306. Make sure to get the username and the password correct. And so for now, our next command, since we do have valid credentials for the MySQL instance, what we're going to do is access it with this command, MySQL-H with the site, the actual URL, P for port, capital P for port 3306, and all this information here: D for database employees, U for reports clone, and P will be empty, and it'll prompt us for the password coming up. Let's just look at this information to verify that where to get this information. So here's our host. So that's where the -H comes from. And then we have our port 3306 here, our username, and then the password, which it's going to ask us for in a second. So we'll go ahead and copy that. So just so everyone knows where we're getting this information. And then the DB instance identifier employees, and that's how we get here the D for the database. So let's look and see what this does. Enter password. We're going to use the password provided there, and voila, we are in this database. Now what we can do is show databases. That's usually the first command, and always remember to do a semicolon at the end of this command. If you don't do a semicolon, it'll look like this, and you can just do a semicolon here and hit enter if you forget to do the semicolon, and that shows the databases. So we are going to use employees, the semicolon, and now since we're in this here, we can show tables, and we can see all the different tables. We can see employees, so we might be able to get information about employees, and the flag, which is for this purpose of this lab. But let's go ahead and select all from employees, a basic SQL command, and bam, we have extracted all the employee information here, salary included, phone number, etc. So that's a lot of pertinent information we're able to extract just from here. And then to solve this lab, we actually need to do the same command, but for the flag table. So you would do select all from flag. I'm not actually going to run this. You can go ahead and run it yourself to find the flag, and it will be an MD5 hash, which you can submit at the top here. But let's just go through the rest of this and make sure everybody understands remediation steps and what we're really doing here. So this kind of shows all the steps that we went through. And then the defense, this is where we want to emphasize about ENV files. Storing personal AWS credentials in your ENV file locally is okay, but the developer should not have committed the ENV file to a repository where other people in the whole world, in this case, can access them. It's worth noting that companies such as GitGuardian automatically scan for publicly committed secrets and send an email notifying of the breach. If good guys, in this case GitGuardian, are doing this, we can be sure that malicious actors are doing the same. Any exposed secrets should be immediately rotated and the available permissions and logs should be examined to determine the scale of the breach. So we're doing something that's okay using an env file locally, but then it might accidentally get pushed, or the developer might have forgotten that there was sensitive information in there and it got to a public repository. So you don't want to use env files for that. And it also gives a couple tools. It first gives Trufflehog, which you can download by git cloning and go install, and then running the tool with this command. And running the tool with this command, it'll show you the exposed key. There's also git leaks, which is another good alternative, and you can download it with these commands and run the git leaks detect-v, and it'll also show you that access key. And by running these SAST tools regularly, we're able to avoid this type of attack, which is leveraging leaked credentials for Pwnage, specifically using env files in GitHub.